to hush conversation. We'll have time for seeing everyone after the meeting, but to respect everyone's time, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Amber Torbett, the chair of the Bristol MPO, and we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Stephen, if you'll go ahead and take the roll call, please.
All right. And just as a precursor, when you are speaking, this is live, so make sure to speak into the microphone so that we can get that good. Yeah, just to make sure for everyone. It's live when the light's green. All right, and Rhonda Sawyer?
Present.
Blake Ayler?
Present.
Bill Sora?
Present.
Councilman Kevin Wingard? Absent. Mayanna Rice?
Present.
Jason Boswell?
Present.
And Amber Torbett.
Present. Thank you so much. You should have received the minutes in your packet, both emailed ahead of time and on your desk. If you've had a chance to review those, I will entertain a motion to adopt the minutes from our February 3rd meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Bill. And Rhonda, all those in favor of adopting our minutes from our last meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So at this time, we allow some time to take comment from the public. There is a huge spotlight on me for some reason, so I can't see you very well, except for you, of course. But anyway, we welcome any comment of items not on the agenda. You can always, does it matter if it's on the agenda or just any public comment? I don't guess it matters.
Unscheduled comments from the public.
Any unscheduled public comments? Okay. We'll leave time at the end, of course, if you have any comments on what's been discussed today or anything on your mind. We'll leave time for that as well. We'll move on then. Stephen, I know there are folks in the audience. Do you want to recognize we've got lots of folks here? Our Kingsport people are here. Again, I can't make out faces.
Yes, the Kingsport MPO is here among different representatives from area agencies.
Okay, great. Wonderful. All right, well, we'll move into our published agenda. Our first item of business is the Unified Planning Work Program, the Virginia portion, Resolution 22-03. This is our work program for 2022-2023, also emailed to all of us and a copy on our desks. Stephen, do you want to give us a summary of the updates?
Sure. So in general, the UPWP, or the Unified Planning Work Program, it outlines the MPO's planning activities and funding for the fiscal year. Tennessee does 2-year UPWPs and Virginia does 1-year ones. So we adopted a UPWP for FY 2022 and 2023 last August, but we are making an amendment in order to update that for Virginia's FY 23 numbers, and it has some other information in it. Mainly it is for the fiscal funding information. You can see that here on the slide. And typically the amount is estimated for the next year on the 2-year UPWP. So the amount that we estimated, you'll see in that first column, or the second column, and we had estimated $83,732. There's quite a bit of a difference, 13.5% difference with the FHWAPL funds. And so we'll be receiving $95,003, and that's 80% federal, 10% state, and 10% local. And the 5303 funds from FTA were also increased around 13.7%. So we saw pretty significant gains for historical amounts. So the total difference is 13.5% for the funding difference being 17,748. Also, there were some other changes and additions put in there. The IIJA, or the Infrastructure and Investments Job Act, some people like to call it the bill, or the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. It supersedes MAP 21 and the FAST Act, so changes were made in the UPWP acknowledging that. And we added some activities showing support for a VDOT project pipeline, Smart Scale, and the STARTS program, which is strategically targeted affordable roadway solutions. And the FTA and FHWA jointly released some federal planning emphasis areas that we included in the UPWP as well. This is subject to change with any federal or state comments, but this is going ahead and approving it now. A lot of that will be looking at what the carryover funds will be for FY23.
Are there any questions or comments? Pretty straightforward since we do this often.
Yeah. And of course, the staff does recommend the approval of Amendment 1.
Okay. Well, if there are no other comments or questions, do I hear a motion to adopt the draft Virginia portion update?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Rhonda. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jason. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. It's adopted. Thanks for your hard work. Stephen? Okay. Our next resolution on the agenda is to support the Smart Scale Projects, Resolution 2204. It's in your packet, but we'll hear a brief summary from Stephen on this as well, please.
Sure. So we have a series of applications, I believe it's 6 in total, going through Smart Scale right now in the different areas for our Virginia region of the MPO. So Smart Scale is the Commonwealth Transportation Board's prioritization process for selecting and funding transportation projects. It's an application process that's available to region agencies like MPOs, counties, cities, and towns to submit project proposals for funding. As part of the application process, the eligibility for various jurisdictions to submit the Smart Scale funding requires support from the MPO, which is why we're having this today for resolution for support. You can see the different applications. These are split up into the agency or body that is submitting the application. So the first is Bristol City, which is Bristol, Virginia, and it's for the MLK Junior Boulevard, Birch Street, and Monroe Street intersection improvements. This would probably look familiar to the board as this came up a couple of years ago as an application for a roundabout, but this was changed in order to, well, they don't seem to like roundabouts, I guess. So it was changed in order to hopefully get it some funding for improvement on this. The second is the Cook Street extension, which is in Abingdon, which you can see on the map here. It'll connect Cummings Street and Stone Knoll Road by extending Cook Street westward. The third is application put forward by Washington County. Let's see here. And that's US 11, US 58 corridor improvements. You can see that there on the map. And the Bristol MPO is putting forth applications for Bristol, Virginia, and Washington County for the I-81 frontage road from Stagecoach Road to Old Dominion Road for improvements there. Also an application for the town of Abingdon for the, let's see, Frenchmore Boulevard extension. Let's see, there we go. And another for the city of Bristol, Virginia, for improvements at Commonwealth and Euclid Avenue. And staff does recommend executive board send favorable endorsement to the state of Virginia for the smart scale applications. Any questions?
Anything to add, VDOT?
I'd be more than happy to entertain any questions anyone has. At VDOT, as the planning manager, we work with each one of our localities to assist them through the smart scale process. So we have been inherently active in all the projects that you see on the screen that's been presented before you. So I'd be more than happy to entertain any questions that you may have. Yes, sir.
I think the Martin Luther King area is just tailor-made for a roundabout. I know they're not used a lot here, but they are used a lot in other places, and it'd be good for us to get used to them. That area is tailor-made for a roundabout.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, we need to adopt these, I assume, as a whole, all the projects.
Yes.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the smart scale projects as identified?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2204.
Thank you, Bill.
I'll second.
Ryan? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Motion carries. Resolution 2204 of the projects have been approved. At this time, we hear from, well, do we have any other updates, or do we just want to go into our presentation?
So we do have a presentation from the DRPT Chief of Rail Transportation.
Okay.
But there are, if anyone wants to mention other matters, I know that there were some corridor studies that were awarded for Sullivan County that you put forward, and one that the city of Bristol also put forward that were awarded. Kingsport also got one as well, yes. And so the one for the city of Bristol, Tennessee is for State Street, a corridor study. That, if you want to speak on the one for Sullivan County, Amber.
Yeah, sure. So I'm thrilled that we both were awarded, because I was worried we were in competition with each other. So that's a huge relief. It doesn't always work out that we can pass it back and forth when these opportunities come up. So I'm thrilled that you all were awarded the one on State Street, because that's very much needed as well. The one in the county is a corridor study of Weaver Pike corridor from the city limits out to the river. It is Weaver Pike is State Route 358, and that includes the Sullivan East High School and Sullivan East Middle School campuses. So with the new middle school and some other commercial developments that have come about, we felt it was time to have that corridor studied. In my lifetime, I don't believe it's been formally studied by TDOT, maybe by the MPO, the staff. But so anyway, we're excited to get started and work together on that. So thank you.
Yeah, great stuff. Anyone else have any?
Yes, but they choose from the short list of pre-qualified engineering firms. So I don't think the local governments get to choose, TDOT gets to choose. We just get to be a part of the process. And so stay tuned. They have not, other than announcing it to all of us via email, nothing's been started yet. So
Randy, that same is accurate for the West State Street study too.
Okay.
all right, well, we will welcome our guests here that are going to, I guess Emily Stock, thank you for coming. I will turn it over to you.
And just briefly, I do have a microphone for questions. If anyone in the audience does have a question for Emily Stock, it's awesome to have her here. Again, she's the Chief of Rail Transport for the Department of Rail and Public Transportation for Virginia. Just one moment while I get your slides up.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me today. I have a few slides, and before Stephen pulls them up, I can tell you a little bit about DRPT for those of you all who aren't familiar. The Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation oversees transportation funding for public transportation for and provides funding mostly through the federal government, also through state programs for buses and also for rail transportation in Virginia. And we focus in the rail department on freight and passenger rail. But recently, we have also spun off another agency called the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority that you all may be familiar with. The department had an agreement that it negotiated with CSX and one with Norfolk Southern, and an agreement with Amtrak to add service in Virginia for state-sponsored passenger rail, and the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority is overseeing that effort that involves quite a few capital improvements throughout the state, both in the Western Rail Corridor that extends to Roanoke now and eventually farther south, and then also on the eastern part of the state, the 95 corridor and Hampton Roads. And so that entity, the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, has its own office, but and oversees the operations of Amtrak Virginia state-sponsored Amtrak service, and the projects to add additional service. But Department of Rail and Public Transportation is still the agency responsible for long-range planning for passenger rail and for freight rail, for developing the statewide rail plan that's required by the Federal Railroad Administration every 4 years. And we also administer a number of freight rail related grants and work with our freight partners, both the Port of Virginia, short line railroads, and the Class 1 freight railroads like Norfolk Southern and CSX. So our Department of Rail and Public Transportation did a study that was concluded in November 2021. We were required by the General Assembly to look at an extension to a passenger rail service to Bristol, look at the cost and the ridership. It had a pretty limited scope, and we did look at the studies that have been done over the years for service to Bristol, took those into account, and also had the benefit of having some of the ridership information for the relatively new Roanoke service that was extended. So we had some ridership information that came from that effort as well. So I can start going through slides. And before we even get started, this study for the General Assembly is available on the General Assembly's website, and I can in the meeting minutes, I'm happy to give you the link for that study if you aren't already familiar. But it's posted there. It was issued by the Secretary of Transportation in 2021. So if you're looking at the website, you can search for it there. So the Bristol study scope, again, this was a study that was required by the General Assembly to provide an assessment of both the total project costs and incremental costs resulting from the extension of intercity passenger rail to Bristol, Virginia. And DRPT reviewed 8 previous studies developed between 1996 and 2019 to understand the methodology that was used previously for ridership and cost estimates. And the 2021 study is an independent estimate, but it's built upon earlier work with updated service assumptions, cost information, and methodology considerations. And this is an overview of the route. We looked at the route between the New River Valley and Bristol. At the time that we started this study, we were working with folks in the New River Valley and Amtrak and Norfolk Southern to understand what improvements might be needed to bring rail to the New River Valley, and so. Obviously, going from Roanoke to Bristol, you would need to have that service to New River Valley first. It's in between, and so our agency and actually Virginia Passenger Rail Authority has done a study of the of a station location, potential station location in the New River Valley, and once that. And that project was going on while we were doing this project. So at the time, we weren't sure exactly where a station location would be. So we left options open, looked at a couple of different options. But the costs that we looked at were the cost to improve the railroad infrastructure between a New River Valley station and a Bristol station. So that was the geographic area that we looked at. And let's see, this is a more detailed map of the service extension route that we looked at. And in orange, you'll see some of the areas that we know would require improvements, and these are all listed out in the report. And those improvements include some double tracking, some passing sidings, crossovers so that trains can pass one another, and turnouts. And most of this route is a single track today, and it also it's about 115 miles a track, just to give you some idea of scale. And right now, only freight runs on this track, so no passenger rail at this time, as you are probably aware. And one of the considerations that we had, as I mentioned, was the fact that we don't have, at the time that this study was being done, we didn't have a station location for New River Valley. So we were looking at a few different options, and I show this slide because, as you'll see in my next couple of slides, the cost estimates that we came up with were relied heavily on, or a big factor in the cost estimates was the potential for having to build a tunnel between the New River Valley station and Bristol, and that could really bring the costs up of upgrading this line. And so I wanted to point this out because that's this tunnel location along the Whitethorne district route would definitely bring the costs up. And I can go back to this if you want to look at it. But fortunately, while we've been doing this study, the New River Valley study that Virginia Passenger Rail Authority is working on has gotten farther along, and they've actually eliminated a few sites from consideration and have come to a better understanding of where a good station location would be, and we think that we'd be able to avoid having to build that tunnel. So the results of the study that we did showed that that a cost to upgrade that line between the New River Valley and Bristol would be between $500 million and $1.5 billion. And of course, the $500 million is along the Blacksburg branch route, which, if you're familiar with Christiansburg, is that would make use of a station site near the mall. And then the Whitethorne district route is the one that I showed you before that would include the tunnel, and that's what brings that price up to almost $1.5 billion. And the year of expenditure dollars, 2030. So we think that that cost would be closer to the $0.54 billion. Making use of the Blacksburg branch route at this point in that site selection study for New River Valley. And then I'm going to take you down to ridership. So it's about 10,000 to 15.5 thousand per year, depending on the model. We used a couple of different models. We used the Amtrak incremental model. We also looked at the Virginia statewide transportation model and to come up with a range. Because as you're looking so far into the future, and we wanted to use the best information out there and not and make sure that we're calculating what that potential could be. So those were the results of the study, and then also those O&M costs, the operation and maintenance costs. Those are those incremental costs that you have when you're operating rail service, and so we found that some of the service revenue could offset the O&M costs by up to $500,000 to $0.7 million per year. So I wanted to also bring your attention to the Federal Railroad Administration Southeast Regional Rail Plan that came out in 2020. This is a little hard to read, but it does show an emerging, a network independent route that could come along in the future between Bristol and Knoxville, and then on to Chattanooga. And so I bring this up because it's a long range plan that the Southeast Rail Corridor Commission has been working on with the Federal Railroad Administration. It's not part of that core express for Southeast Rail that is already started to be developed through a series of NEPA studies, environmental studies, and other investments in that corridor between Washington and down to Jacksonville and on to Florida. But it is featured in this map, so I wanted to pass this along to you all. And I have been talking to counterparts in Tennessee as well about the possibility of bringing passenger rail through Bristol. And I understand that Tennessee is working on its statewide rail plan in 2023. They did their last one in 2019, so that their statewide rail plan will be coming up again next year, and they're also their General Assembly has pushed through a study to look at passenger rail to major cities in Tennessee as well. So and we also have a call that the Chamber of Commerce has set up for us to talk with legislators and also counterparts in Department of Transportation in Tennessee about the possibility of extension through Bristol. So next steps: continue coordination with Tennessee, Amtrak, and the Federal Railroad Administration to explore route feasibility and the potential to extend passenger rail through Bristol. We also would have to do some coordination with Norfolk Southern. Norfolk Southern is the host railroad. They're the ones who own the railroad corridor. We do have experience with shared use corridors in Virginia that have passenger rail and freight rail on the same infrastructure. But there are obviously investments that need to be made to maintain freight fluidity and the fluidity of the passenger trains on that track. The estimates that our team made for the capital investment that would be needed, the improvements that would be needed along that line, we made our best guesses. And Norfolk Southern could have some other ideas about improvements that would be needed in this area, and they haven't commented on those yet. So that's something that is a big undertaking that would have to happen in order to really understand what improvements would be needed. And then, of course, working with Tennessee is another next step. And the Federal Railroad Administration does have a corridor identification development program it's going to be rolled out in just the next few days. The date that I understand that it's supposed to be rolled out is May 14th. And that is meant to identify and prioritize corridors for passenger rail development. And so I showed you that map earlier. Can I go back? I don't know if I can go back. The Federal Railroad Administration's future plan, the 2020, there we go, Southeast Regional Rail Plan. So that corridor development program will be looking at these different corridors within the Southeast and prioritizing corridors based on the level of development and investment that are already contemplated for these corridors. As you know, some of these corridors already have rail, and some of them are being studied. Some of them have gone through an environmental process. Some of them have gone through service development process in coordination with Amtrak and FRA. So they're all in different stages of development or expansion. And so that corridor development program is meant to prioritize investments in those corridors, and it's part of the IIJA, or also known as BIL, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. And so we're looking forward to getting some guidance on that corridor improvement program. Again, that's coming along on May 14th. We expect it to come along. And so the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority is going to be making recommendations for corridors in Virginia through that program. And so I understand that this is a corridor that would be part of that program, hopefully. So let's see. I think these are all of the elements of the study that I have pulled together, but I'm happy to answer questions. And anything I can't answer today, I can always pass along. As I said, I work closely with the folks at the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, and they are in the trenches every day on Amtrak service that goes down to Roanoke now and will be extended to the New River Valley, and have a good handle on growth and ridership. I do know that the ridership has picked up quite a bit since the pandemic, which is heartening. And I also work closely with the Transit Division of Department of Rail and Public Transportation, and they have a new service, relatively new service. It started in 2017, but then there was an expansion to Bristol just in 2021. It's called the Virginia Breeze Intercity Bus, and it does go to Bristol now. It started a route to Bristol in November of 2021, and the ridership has grown in the last few months. It started out 600 something the first month, and now it's up to well over 1,000 per month. So that is a great intercity service that I think it would be good to monitor as the years and months go by, so that we can anticipate what potential rail service could do in this region. So, any questions for me?
I have a couple.
Sure.
And you may not know, and maybe it wouldn't be comparable, but what was the timeline from the rail from DC to Roanoke from planning to operation? And would that be comparable of what we can expect for the timeline from Roanoke to New River Valley? Just trying to think, like, in our lifetime will we be able to participate and enjoy the passenger rail from here to DC?
So let's see. I don't know the number of years, but I can tell you that I've been at DRPT for 11 years, and I think that it was in our plan from the time, it was in our rail plan from the time that I started. So it was contemplated for many years. And so the day that the planning started, it's hard to say exactly when the planning started, because it's something that's been contemplated for a long time. Obviously, there was service there before. But I'll have to get back to you to let you know exactly when that effort started to really look at the station, to do that first feasibility study and cost estimate for the station and for the upgrades along Norfolk Southern. But I know that work started while I was at DRPT, so it's less than 10 years. I can tell you that for certain. But another factor to consider is the fact that when Virginia started sponsoring Amtrak service, which was about 10 years ago, to now, we started sponsoring service down to Charlottesville, and then it extended to Lynchburg, then Roanoke. So it's been an incremental process, and so one station leads to another. It's exciting that we're talking about New River Valley now, so we're going in the right direction. And but the number of miles, the 115 miles, is a lot to bite off, as you can imagine. And the cost estimates, from what I can see, and I haven't done a comparison of the number of miles to extend to Roanoke versus what we're talking about here. I haven't looked at the cost estimate differences, but these cost estimates are, it's a long distance, so it's a big number, and that will have bearing on the time it would take to figure this out and get the funding to do it.
So what can we be doing, either through our local governments or the MTPO? Is there anything more that we can be doing to help champion this, other than participate in meetings and so forth?
Well, I think that the Chamber of Commerce's effort to get legislators together to talk on a regular basis about next steps is great. In involving Tennessee legislators and getting into that prioritization that is the FRA's corridor development program is a good step as well. I think that those two processes are really going to help, and I think having this regular dialogue through the Chamber of Commerce is it's definitely pushing that along, keeping it at the front of people's minds. And there are mechanisms out there, so that's good.
In regards to Virginia Breeze, I think you indicated the first month was ridership of 600, and then following that, ridership of 1,000. Is that consistent with the projections that DRPT had for for the Virginia Breeze service to Bristol?
So I need to get back to you on what the projections were. I'm not familiar with what they were. I know that COVID threw a wrench in things, and so some of the projections may have been higher than what we see, but that growth month over month is heartening, and I know that the Breeze in general has increased 56% in the past year. So it's rebounding from COVID, but I have a feeling that whatever was projected it may not be as valid as a typical projection would be. But I'm happy to get back to you. Sure. On what the projections were versus reality.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from anyone? Well, if you think of anything, you can email or call Stephen or Emily directly. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Sure. And yes, please reach out anytime. Hopefully my contact information will be in the meeting notes.
Yes, I'll include that for you. Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. She drove all the way in from Roanoke this morning, or not Roanoke, Richmond, so I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, do we have any other updates that we need to share from TDOT or VDOT?
I will say, if I may, DRPT had shared with me, Tiffany Dubinsky was not able to make it with us today, but she had shared with me the update from DRPT that was given at Kingsport's MTPO meeting earlier today. So I'm gonna go through this. If you have any questions, I will try my best to answer them as best as I can. FY 2023 Draft 6-Year Improvement Program. Last night, Bristol had our meeting in Abington. DRPT released its fiscal year 2023 6-Year Improvement Program on April the 20th. A copy can be found on their website, and if you reach out to us, we'll be more than happy to get it to you. As I said, they're currently hosting the public meetings. The last one is tonight, and it's in Salem, and that concludes the 9-district round tour that they take every year. Transit Service and Delivery Advisory Committee, TSDAC, has begun work on updates to the Merit Capital and Operating Programs and Transit Strategic Plan Guidelines. The next meeting is May the 13th, 2022. If you have any questions at all, there's registration online and viewing. We'll be more than happy to get that link to you as well if you need that. Transit Equity and Modernization Study. They held a virtual forum on Thursday, April the 21st from 10 to 11. That draft action plan is open for public comment at this time. It's open through May the 13th. That information can be found on their website as well at DRPT. If you need any more information on that, we'll be more than happy to provide that link to you. DRPT Bike Month. We're encouraging all Virginians to participate in Bike Month, and that is in May. Promoting biking is a big thing at Virginia in both VDOT and DRPT. We're firm believers in that. Bike to Work Day will be held on May the 20th. Social media, advertising, and those events are held throughout the month. We're trying to raise awareness about the benefits of biking and the availability of trails throughout the Commonwealth. We have a number of trails that can be utilized, so we ask everyone to get out, use the trails, use them in Virginia, use them in Tennessee, but get out and enjoy Bike Month. If you have any more questions on that, we'd be more than happy to answer that as well.
Well, okay. Anything else? Going once. All right. Well, very good. Thank you all for coming. Stick around if you'd like. And do we have anything else, Stephen? No?
Amber, if I could, and I apologize one more time, I'm going to keep butting in, and I'm going to do this for the last time. Bill Albright, would you raise your hand for me?
Oh, Bill.
Mr. Bill Albright's in the crowd with us, and I want to recognize him for the service that he spent in Northeast Tennessee for his career and in Southwest Virginia. Bill oversees the MTPO in Kingsport, and he's going to be retiring and leaving us, and his guidance and work that he has done can be seen all throughout Northeast Tennessee, all throughout Southwest Virginia. He's been a pillar in the community and the work that he has done. And Bill, we certainly appreciate everything you've done, and congratulations on a fantastic retirement. You deserve it. Yes, sir.
Yes, you did. Thank you, Bill. I'm sorry I didn't see you. Okay, well, at this time, we'll close out. Entertain a motion to officially adjourn our meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Bill. Second?
Second.
All right. We are adjourned.